It's October 18th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with a massive blast at a Gaza hospital on Tuesday. Hundreds of people are feared dead after an explosion at the medical center, with Hamas blaming Israel, and Israel saying Palestinian Islamic Jihad is responsible. The UN condemned the attack, calling for the immediate protection of civilians and healthcare facilities. Following the hospital blast, U.S. President Joe Biden cancels the Jordan leg of his Middle East trip. The announcement came as he left for Israel to meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The U.S. further tightens China's access to AI chips by slapping restrictions on the export of advanced computing chips to China. A massive blast hit a hospital in central Gaza on Tuesday, killing hundreds of patients and civilians. Hamas blamed the Israeli airstrike, while Israeli military forces said Palestinian Islamic Jihad were behind the blast. Our Ishihu has the latest. A massive blast struck Al-Aliyah Rabi Baptist Hospital in the center of Gaza City on Tuesday local time. A Palestinian health ministry official said at least 500 people were killed in the blast. Hamas said that an Israeli airstrike hit the hospital, while the Israeli Defense Forces said that misfired rockets by Palestinian Islamic Jihad militants were to blame. The group has denied the accusation. Hundreds of patients and civilians were reportedly seeking shelter at the hospital. Survivors of the strike were transferred to another hospital 1.5 kilometers away. The World Health Organization condemned the attack.
WHO strongly condemns the attack on Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in the north of the Gaza Strip. The hospital was operational with patients, healthcare givers, and internally displaced people sheltering there.
The UN agency chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus on social media also called for the immediate protection of civilians and healthcare. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East also said at least 6 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike that hit a school in Gaza run by the agency. Reuters meanwhile reported that an Israeli airstrike killed the Hamas armed commander Ayman Nofal in charge of the central Gaza area. Ishihu, Arirang News. And following the Gaza hospital blast, U.S. President Joe Biden's summit with leaders from Jordan, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority has been canceled. Just as he was set to take off to Israel, he is on his way to Israel now to reaffirm Washington's solidarity. Lee Kyung-in reports.
U.S. President Joe Biden is heading to Israel on Wednesday. That is according to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken following his more than 7-hour-long meeting in Tel Aviv with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his board cabinet.
He's coming here at a critical moment for Israel, for the region, and for the world. And he's coming here to do the following. First, the President will reaffirm the United States' solidarity with Israel and our ironclad commitment to its security.
Biden's visit comes as fears are growing that the latest flare-up in the Israel-Hamas war could spill into other countries in the region. Tensions have been escalating in the Middle East, with Israel exchanging fire with Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah near its northern border with Lebanon. Iran has issued warnings against Israel's operations in Gaza.
Leaders of the resistance will not allow the Zionist regime to do whatever it wants in Gaza and then go after other resistance groups after it's done with Gaza. Therefore, any preemptive action is possible in the coming hours.
With world leaders such as UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan expressing the importance of avoiding further regional escalation, experts predict President Biden will also use his visit to avert the war's expansion. Addressing the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza is also on Biden's agenda, where civilians are facing severe shortages of water, electricity, and fuel.
The President will hear from Israel how it will conduct its operations in a way that minimizes civilian casualties and enables humanitarian assistance to flow to civilians in Gaza in a way that does not benefit Hamas.
Biden will also continue his efforts to secure the release of at least 199 hostages held by Hamas. The militant group on Monday released a video showing a 21-year-old Israeli hostage who appeared to be suffering from an arm injury. This marks the first time that Hamas has made public a video of a hostage held in Gaza. 이경은, Arirang News.
Washington has announced a set of rules to update and strengthen restrictions on the export of advanced computing chips to China, in an apparent move to further curb China's technological advancement. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Department of Commerce on Tuesday announced a set of rules to update and strengthen its restrictions on the export of advanced computing semiconductors to China. The Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security released an update to rules for strengthening export controls after guidelines were published a year ago to restrict China from purchasing and manufacturing high-end chips deemed critical for military advantage. Among the updated rules are notification requirements for the export of certain chips with performance just below the restricted threshold. It also includes new rules to prevent companies from China and other countries of concern from securing controlled chips through their foreign subsidiaries. According to Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, the updates on the measures are set up to increase the effectiveness of U.S. controls and further shut off pathways to evade restrictions. She added that the controls remain Washington's clear focus on military applications and confront the threats to its national security posed by the Chinese government's military-civil fusion strategy. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department also added 13 Chinese companies to its entity list, a list of firms considered to be involved in activities contrary to U.S. national security and foreign policy interests. Tuesday's release noted that foundries producing chips for listed firms will need a Bureau of Industry and Security license before the foundries may send such chips to these entities or parties acting on behalf of these entities. The latest announcement comes after the department issued a rule last week updating general authorizations for South Korean chipmakers Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix to continue supplying their China-based plants with certain U.S. semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's widely believed that the Bank of Korea will leave the policy rate unchanged for the 6th time straight in Thursday's rate-setting meeting. Then, should we be relieved to say that the rate hike cycle is over now? For more, we are joined by Professor Shin Myung-gyu this morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
South Korea's central bank is expected to leave the policy rate unchanged at 3.5% tomorrow. Professor Shim, are you also on the same page?
Yes, I also think that the BOK will not raise the target rate at this upcoming meeting by several reasons. First, the Fed did not raise its target rate in its previous meeting, giving more room for the BOK to keep the same rate. Second, as was emphasized by the recent report by the IMF, the household debt in Korea is really the problem. According to the IMF, DSR level was the second highest among all the countries that reported DSR last year, and that makes the BOK to hesitate raising the rate. Third, compared to the last year, inflation rate measured by the CPI has become lower.
I see. Then let's delve deeper, Professor Shim. Can the crisis over in the Middle East become a factor in the BOK's interest rate decision-making in the future, or has it already?
Sure, and I think it has already become one of the key factors that the BOK should care about. Most importantly, it will increase the uncertainty on the oil price as the crisis can be expanded to the Middle East. Price of both Brent and WTI crude oils have surged around 5 to 7% since the emergence of the war. While there might be no immediate impact on the inflation rate in Korea from the war, because it will take some time to observe the kind of the spillover effect from the war, but it will eventually affect Korea. Also, a research by my colleague found that the increase in oil price uncertainty itself has the negative effects on the global economy, so that we also have another possibly negative news on Korea.
Sure, the more prolonged the war becomes, the heavier impact the crisis will have on South Korea. Now, if there is a rate freeze at 3.5% tomorrow, it'll be the sixth consecutive one since January, right? Now, in theory, ending the rate pause to tackle inflation should help revitalize spending here in the country. Is that the case?
I don't think that pausing the interest rate hike can stimulate consumption or the economy, because consumption is not just a function of the interest rate. It is a function of current income, future income, and wealth as well, so that if the economic condition does not become better, then I don't think that just pausing interest rate hike will increase consumption. So let me quickly point out that the expectations on the future economic activity in Korea has become worse since August again. This implies that on average, households in Korea would not want to increase their consumption expenditure, as their views on future income are not rosy, and hence rather they will save rather than consume.
Sure, so the rate freeze will not directly influence the spending here in the country, you're saying. Then, would you say the door for additional rate hikes this year is closed?
I still think that there still is a chance to raise the policy rate. The first reason is that the Fed still opens the door to increase its target interest rate. Second, inflation rate has rebounded in Korea since August, implying that this high inflationary episode might not have ended. Third, as I pointed out earlier, the Israel-Hamas war together with Ukraine-Russian war are remaining threats for the future inflation rate, so that the BOK has to prepare for the possible inflation in the future.
I see. Now that you've mentioned the Fed is scheduled to have two more rate-setting meetings this year, one in late October, later this month, and also in December. Considering what Jerome Powell is saying, the fight against inflation isn't over, we should probably assume rate hikes are on the way, right? If that's the case, when would that be?
Yes, I also expect that the Fed will raise its policy rate once again, maybe this year. And there are many reasons why I believe so. First, there are signs that the U.S. economy can still endure the potential hike in the rate. The labor market is still good, and consumption expenditure in the U.S. has increased for the several months, so that there is still room for the Fed to increase the interest rate. And also, as you pointed out, Jerome Powell continuously signals the financial market that the Fed can raise the rate. And the inflation rate was 3.7% last month, and it is still much higher than the target inflation rate of the Fed, which is 2%. So that I still think that there is a possibility that the Fed will increase the interest rate maybe this coming meeting or maybe later.
Right, so you mean by later, can we say that maybe next year? So are you saying that if there's no rate hike within the year, so within the next 2 months, there will still be another rate hike, at least in the first quarter of 2024, right?
Yeah, that's what I expect.
All right, Professor Shim, thank you so much for your time this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you too.
As South Korea's role in the world continues to grow in its alliance with the U.S., and as a global pivotal state, the country's values are reinforcing democratic values in the world. According to Victor Cha, a former U.S. official on Asian affairs and an eminent expert on Korean Peninsula affairs, our president correspondent Oh Soo-young had the chance to sit down with him.
South Korea is now an equal partner of the United States, with the potential to join the Group of 7 nations to cooperate on mounting global security threats and challenges. That's according to Victor Cha, a former US National Security Council Director on Asian Affairs, speaking to Arirang News in Seoul. Amid reports of North Korea increasing weapons exchanges with Moscow, Cha voiced concern that Pyongyang's emboldened posture could make it harder to deter the regime's missile and nuclear ambitions.
The North Koreans were able to do quite well at gaining all the parts it needed for their ICBM program despite very harsh sanctions. So I worry about, especially if Russia facilitates it, I worry that the North Koreans will be able to get away with a lot.
He underscored the need for stronger deterrence measures by Seoul, Washington and Tokyo based on their trilateral Camp David agreements to ramp up three-way military measures to deter Pyongyang and mechanisms to jointly address common challenges across the Indo-Pacific region.
Yeah, I mean, South Korea, I think, is an equal partner. It used to be the case that the United States was sort of the senior ally and Japan and Korea were the junior partners. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it all starts with US, Japan, Korea. If that relationship is strong, then I think the United States feels like it's on solid footing, whether it's managing the rise of China or whether it's seeking broader regional architectures in Asia. The US, Japan, Korea relationship is core. It's core to that, based on common security interests, but common values, common norms, these sorts of things.
In this push for freedom, human rights and a rules-based global order, President Yoon Suk-yeol last year became the first Korean leader to attend the G7 meeting as a guest nation and was invited again to the Hiroshima summit in May. Cha believes the group of advanced democracies could become a G8 to include South Korea.
Yeah, I think so. Right now, the UN Security Council is not really functional because of China and Russia, which means the United States and others need to seek out a new venue. But I do think, we're at a critical point right now in terms of being able to pull together three allies to move forward to shape the environment in which China will rise, and to work on things like supply chain, countering disinformation, these sorts of things.
With disinformation by state actors shaping biased views on global affairs, Cha also touched upon the role of media outlets in democracies to promote unbiased, accurate content.
Groups like Arirang, Yonhap, others that are sort of news-based, not with a lot of editorializing, if they make themselves available to these countries that are targets of Chinese disinformation, they can dramatically change the, I don't want to say alignment, the color, if you will, of the countries. They would no longer have to listen to Chinese media and populate the media platforms with Chinese content.
Having highlighted Seoul's democratic coming of age and growing soft power in his book co-authored by Ramon Pacheco Pardo, Cha noted how Seoul is taking initiative on areas like global development, health, supply chains and nuclear energy. In its quest to become a global pivotal state, Cha said South Korea has a lot to offer beyond its interests to benefit the world. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The South Korean national football team on Tuesday thrashed Vietnam 6-0 in their men's football friendly. Playing at the Swan World Cup Stadium, 5 different South Koreans got on the score sheet. The Taeguk Warriors took the lead just 5 minutes into the match, with Kim Min-jae scoring off his shoulder from Lee Kang-in's corner. Hwang Hee-chan made it 2-0 in the first half before Son Heung-min, Lee Kang-in and Chung Woo-young added goals after the break. And Vietnam gave up an own goal in the 50th minute. South Korea has now won 3 games straight and scored 10 goals in the past 2 matches.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the country has used US-supplied long-range missiles for the first time. This amid its ongoing war with Russia. Speaking on Tuesday evening, Zelensky said that the Army tactical missile system, or toughens missiles used, had been effective and proven themselves. He did not specify when the missiles were deployed, but there are reports that they were used to destroy 9 helicopters at Russian bases in East Ukraine, and that dozens of Russian troops were killed or injured. The ATACMS were delivered to Ukraine in secret, with their maximum range reduced from 300 to 160 kilometers, amid U.S. concerns about raising tensions with Russia. The missiles sent to Ukraine also carry cluster munitions instead of a single explosive charge. Now, in the Belgian capital of Brussels, the gunman who killed 2 Swedish citizens and injured another on Monday has been shot dead. Described by local media as a 45-year-old Tunisian man named Abdesalem, the shooter was killed on Tuesday morning local time after being confronted by authorities in a cafe. Police say they found a weapon on him and a bag of clothes. They added that the attack may be linked to the Israel-Hamas conflict. The gunman's death comes hours after he fatally shot 2 Swedish citizens and later admitted to the killings in a video posted to social media. Monday's shooting came ahead of a football match between Belgium and Sweden. The Euro 2024 qualifying match was abandoned at halftime over security concerns. Now, in a major setback to the rights of same-sex couples, India's Supreme Court on Tuesday refused to legalize same-sex marriages. The decision comes after the Supreme Court heard 21 arguments on the case between April and May this year. The top court instead said that the decision lies with India's parliament and that the court can only interpret the law and not make it. The justices instead voiced support for a government proposal to create a panel to review granting rights and benefits to same-sex couples. The court added that same-sex couples should be provided legal protections from the state and that denying them benefits and services given to heterosexual couples violates their fundamental rights. And finally, the Amazon River has fallen to its lowest level in over 120 years amid a severe drought. As of Monday, levels at the Brazilian port of Manaus were recorded at 13.59 meters compared to 17.6 meters 1 year ago. It's the lowest level since records began in 1902. Tributaries to the Amazon River have also dried up, leaving boats stranded and cutting off food and water supplies to remote villages. Meanwhile, high water temperatures are suspected of being behind the deaths of more than 100 endangered river dolphins. The drought follows months without rain and higher than normal temperatures that are being blamed on this year's El Niño climate phenomenon.
Good morning. Autumn colors arrived behind schedule on Bukhansan Mountain yesterday, coming 2 days later than usual. We had another chilly night helping autumn colors to expand. Single-digit morning temperatures to start out the day in Seoul, but highs will rise fast into the 20s this afternoon. Temperature swings could be nearly 20 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country. Do dress accordingly for the weather today. Seoul will go up to 21 degrees. Daegu and Gwangju will see highs of 23 degrees Celsius under plenty of autumn sunshine during the day. And then central regions will see more clouds joining as the day goes on. Then rain is in the forecast from tomorrow in the capital and west of Gangwon-do from tomorrow at dawn, spreading nationwide Thursday. Rain could continue into Friday morning. And that band of rain will bring a big chill to the country this weekend. Plan accordingly and dress warmly for autumn activities you may want to enjoy this weekend. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.